Hi, welcome to the outskirts of Copenhagen and welcome to the bank. The bank started 6 years ago, and I started it with my partner Ole Nørup and an outside partner, businessman called Christian Bürge. And me and Christian, we have been talking actually 5 years up till we started this company. And I really liked his idea of kind of the thinking out of the borders, thinking of creating a Scandinavian company with international ambitions. And I really liked that he could see with both Noma and Mutu that kind of growing international success from your home market and with the values from your home market was kind of the basic idea. So out of that came the idea that I was around 45 at that time, so I also had the feeling that I needed to hook up with somebody younger than myself to kind of keep pace with what was going on in the music business. So I hooked up with Ole Nørup, who had a management company called We Do Management, and he was working with, at that time, a really small rock band called the Minds of 99. But he was also working with the Chef Records, that was kind of a hip-hop community group that had a lot of streaming hits and were doing a lot of crazy shit on YouTube. So what we ended up doing was to say, okay, in these days we need to create a new kind of company. It would be really difficult just to create a small record company in Denmark, as we did with Copenhagen Records. It would be really difficult just to make a Danish publishing company. So it was kind of like, why don't we do it all? Why don't we try actually to make a modern full service company? Not where we are forced to own everything that the artist does. We don't need to own everything on all artists, but we need to be able to work in all different areas. So that was basically the idea, to say to ourselves that if you want to do an independent company today with an international ambition, you need to be all around the artist. The album in a label world has lost its value. The top level artists can still, sell albums or really stream albums, but for the rest, it's all about the singles. So kind of the role of a label today is just different. We still bring in music that we really like, and our perspective is still the album. And what we use the album for is not to stream a lot in the beginning. We kind of use the album to make an artistic vision for the artist, and then use that album to have something to play when you go out playing live, and then convince the audience through live and through radio primarily, and then kind of grow the following on streaming services out of that. And you could say, I mentioned the Minds of 99, that was a really, really small rock band. And especially 5 years ago, but also now, who wants to sign a rock band? So that was kind of where we started seeing, okay, if we grow the audience live. In the beginning it was a lot of plus 30 audience, because that was the people who had kind of an idea of rock music. But by making albums, making really good television performances, making good live shows, making good interviews, stuff like, and making good records, basically, that's really important, was that suddenly it just flipped. We could see, okay, suddenly high school children were seeing this as a new thing, because everybody's listening to hip hop, but suddenly we could see you were actually still able to grow and kind of have an independent or smaller indie audience grow into a mass consumer audience. And it's also really interesting now to see that the streaming numbers on Minds is really, really high. Now they actually, when they release a new song, they go into the top 50. And even more interesting from a business perspective is that all the songs, because they have made great albums, are streaming all the time. So now a lot of money is actually coming through the album, not as a selling, as in the old days, but kind of continuously streaming. That quote came out of kind of the beginning thoughts of making publishing in Denmark. That was one of the areas, when we started this company 5-6 years ago, I've never been in contact with publishing. And it's also because there's been almost no publishing in Denmark. So it's kind of a business area that has kind of gone away from the Danish market. And then I kind of looked in with fresh eyes, even though I had an age of 45. I never tried it before. So I came from the outside looking into publishing. And it was really interesting for me to see that we were really bad, especially in Denmark, of working together. We have this kind of feeling that you need to, if you have something good, you need to protect it. You need to make sure nobody gets a cut of your thing. Normally you say that the Scandinavians has a common ground, it's welfare societies and stuff like that. But in this area we are really, really different. The Swedes have been extremely good at sharing, and sharing in the sense that, let's have as many people into the studio almost as until the song is there, so we can actually have the international ambition fulfilled. Where the Danish, to put it really simple here, is that you have the feeling that, this is a great song, this must be an international hit. Kind of out of context of what competition you are up against internationally. And then we just have the thought that the feeling was to say, the most interesting thing in publishing is that on label you compete directly. Sony compete, with Universal and Warner and vice versa. And if you have a small independent label, you kind of you compete with the other independent label. Maybe you can do a project together, but that's not kind of the main business. The interesting thing in publishing is that, of course, you're competing with the other publishers, but you need to work with them, because if you have a person who combined, if we have a person at the bank publishing combined with a person at Sony ATV who makes really, really good songs, then they need to work together. Then, of course, your percentage is lowered, but it's just really important to get songs out there and to be part of the international music scene. That's much more important than if you get 10 or 20%. As a Dane, it's still really difficult for me. We need to remind ourselves of that all the time, because we tend to go back in the hole to say, it would actually be nice if we just do this for ourselves. And I really experienced that the Swedes are really, really different on that. And I think that's one of many reasons why they had much more success on the publishing side than the Danes had. Ola and I make an inspirational tour to Stockholm. We actually wanted to visit 10. So we went up there and had a meeting with Ola Håkansson.
Justin Bieber sa till Keith Richards, vem fan är du? Och han svarade, men fan är du själv?
Who's kind of in the 70s and really inspirational, and they had Sarah Larsson going on, they had Icona Pop. It was just kind of like, why can they do this? It's a small independent. It was just we were just curious. And then Ole took us to the studios and talked to us about how they were actually creating the songs, and we were visiting all these writing teams sitting around just writing pop songs. And it was out of those sessions that both some of the Sarah Larsson songs and especially the big Icona Pop song came out of one of those sessions. So when we went home in the flight the same evening, it was just kind of like, wow, that for both, Ole was a manager, I was a record label guy, and for both of us it was just like, we don't know anything about this, but this is really interesting. We don't have it in Denmark. Can we actually do this? I've been feeling that it's in the independent world in Denmark, I think the ambition has been too low, and I think it's been more about, can I just have kind of a job? Can I just create my own job? Which is fine if that's what you want to do. My inspiration and Ole's inspiration came out of the ambition that Noma has as a restaurant and Big has as an architectural company. Now we are getting into the big dreams of this company because we are not there yet. But it was kind of that dream of seeing if we, like Big as an architectural company, could go in and say, we can play with the big guys, but we can also show them that this can be done in a different way. And it's the same with Noma, you could say. In the old days in Denmark, if you were a chef and you wanted success, you went to France, you learned the skills, and then you opened a French restaurant in Denmark. That was how you did it. And it was so inspirational to see that what they then said was, no, we will actually say what you would call really boring food, Scandinavian food, and then you kind of build this whole fantastic thing out of that, and then you get the international, you get the whole international world to say, this is not because there's suddenly a good French chef in Denmark, this is because it's a good Danish chef or Scandinavian chef, using the environment he's in to create great stuff. So the whole inspiration from that came from other companies, you could say. we're trying to build everything around that we meet the right person. I was set up actually with Jesper Marta from Promos in Aarhus with Ben Malene. And we met and we kind of clicked immediately. So I invited him to be part of the board at the bank. And he was part of the board, I think 1 year, 1.5 years. And then he suddenly popped the question, if, you know, I want to change my setup, maybe, you know, we should open up the bank in Sweden. And that was really funny because that's the most difficult place to open. Because the Swedes, why the fuck should they work with the Danes? So, and that was also what Ben told me. He said it's actually really intriguing to say that you have a Swede that actually wants to, and then you kind of have solved the most difficult task from the beginning. And for me, that was really interesting because then you suddenly, on the publishing side especially, had a branch in the, you know, kind of the mother country in Europe of publishing. Now we can start this out. So we actually did the same, not exactly the same as in Denmark. We started out more moderately, also to kind of keep costs down. But to say the most important thing is we have a small office, but we need studios. So around that, then we have 5 studios in Stockholm and we have 4 studios here. And then you could say, of course, a lot of stuff is going on separately, but it was also important to try to get people to work together. So we kind of started mixing people up so they got to know each other. And actually pretty fast they signed Daniela in Sweden, who started working with Hugo Helmi when we needed to get the follow-up to Please Don't Lie. She was down here and they wrote Wild. So the idea was to say, okay, but on publishing, about writing songs, it's really easy to make people work together. Maybe it's actually, when you want to go international, maybe a strength that you get kind of the different vibes of the countries. So up until now, that has proven out to be a really good idea. And now we're using it really active. In Sweden, we have set up kind of a monthly camp where the Swedish labels, they know that we can write for them. So they can kind of book a time and say, okay, this month it could be Warner. And then we send in the best writers from all countries to write for a Swedish artist. So that's kind of also a way to maybe make an elite inside the company. So you have kind of new signings, but you also have a place that I want to be the person who's sent to Sweden to write for this big artist, you know. So you get both a community, but you also get internal competition. The long-term relationship to artists is really important, both for me and for the bank in general. I'm a commercial guy. I want big crowds. I want big audience. So if I don't have an artist who wants to do that, it should probably not be me they should work with. So we also try to find artists that kind of have the same dreams as we have. So I think that understanding and that we're actually willing to not see ourselves as a top 50 Spotify, top 50 streaming company. I think a lot of artists are really eager to get a company like that, who's more into kind of creating a bigger career. And again, that doesn't mean that we don't want a top 50. I really like hits, and to survive we need hits. But we're trying to make a business model where we know it's going to take some time. For us, Martin, who's kind of the main guy in Savers, he's kind of one of the few you get each decade from a country. And for us, kind of both as a vocalist, as a musician, as a songwriter, for us it's just top level. We need to see if we can actually, by giving him the time to develop his new music, we're really, on the new project, we've really been focusing on him writing songs first, getting basically really good songs, also using Ben as an A&R internally, just saying, okay, we have a publisher whose ears are really good on songs. Why don't we put him in, not as much as an A&R on the whole production thing, but on the songs. So what has been happening is that Martin ended up writing all songs just on piano, where the last time he kind of produced the songs, he wrote the songs while producing them. So this time, the rule was he could only write on piano. So the song needed to be so good that you could just hear it on piano. So in our view, we have created a fantastic album. So now we need to get it out there. And we have a lot of different thoughts of how we can do this. Right now it's with Universal in Scandinavia that we have a really good collaboration with. And they also really believe in the project. In one view, you could say this is a really old-fashioned record. You know, why don't you just make what's on the charts? And how would you ever get this on radio? So we've actually made a record that is so difficult to promote. But for us, it's just kind of like, you know, we also know that the greatest stuff in the music business has been made out of something that you didn't know you wanted. Ben is calling it, not in this connection, but generally is calling it, people are in for a happy surprise. That's where you kind of, when you hear something, it can be pop, it could be rock, it could be jazz, it can be everything, but it's kind of like, oh, I didn't expect that. And then you have the attention. I think the biggest problem is not to burn out, either not by not having success, but even more dangerously when you have success, because that's really what can kill an independent company. So what you need kind of the structure to be ready to an international success, because it's gonna bring you down. There's so much work as soon as you get that. So you can see if you look around on the teams who have had some success, they kind of end up either stop working or being kind of just part of an international company, or even worse, losing the artist to an international company. So I think the main advice to be find out what you're good at, then become really good at it, and then find like-minded people, and either start a company with big ambition on the company and not only on the artist side, or join somebody like us.
Okay, I hope you guys can hear us again. Now we are back live, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This video, we'll also put it up on YouTube afterwards. If you want to watch it again or want to share it or something, you can definitely do that. To all the people who are new in this morning coffee Zoom meeting, my name is Anders. I come from Music Export Denmark. If you have any questions for Jakob, you can add it in the chat. And this is Jakob Sørensen from the bank, and we are actually live here from the bank. It's the office you can see in the background. I think now that people have seen this video, I feel like they need to know a little bit more. And I kind of want to say, like, when my experience when I walk into the office is that you guys are like, you're pretty serious guys, especially you and Ole are serious guys, but you're also so happy guys. And I'm curious, like, what do you think that drives you in this industry? Is it like competition? Is it the love for music? Is it an eagerness to sort of, you know, make people hear what you want to hear, or make people listen to what you think is great? Like, what really drives you? Because you've been in the industry now for many, many years.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of all the stuff you mentioned, but it's, now that I've been in the business for so many years, you also tend to learn your bad sides. And I don't know if it's only a bad side, but I'm definitely competitive. Sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's also maybe not so good. I always compare it to football. Actually, I think it's also kind of one of the things I've been wondering about in the music industry is that it's kind of uncool to be really competitive. Which has also always puzzled me, because in football it's kind of a really natural part of the game. It's really natural that you kind of that you can yell at, you know, the counterpart. If you have a home team, then you really hate the opposite team, which is totally okay. Even when it gets really stupid and people almost start to beat up each other. Where in music it's not cool, and I feel like, for me, it's the same as in football. This is my home team, you know. So I kind of hate everyone else, to be honest. It is a problem because sometimes the best way to show that for me is actually that sometimes when other people, other Danish companies are releasing new music, it can take me up to half a year to find out if it's good or not, because basically I will think that it's not good because I haven't done it. So, and of course I know that's not true. So I am highly competitive.
Yeah. So that's a driver for you actually.
Yes,
so you need good competitors as well.
Yes, but
the better the other people are, the more eager you are to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the world is full of good competition. So yeah.
I want to circle into what everybody's thinking about, and there's been a lot of talk about. Hold on a second, because so many people are joining right now for some reason that I'm just going to admit everyone. This is a two-man operation. No, I want to talk what everybody's talking about, the COVID crisis. And I want to give you the option. If you answer no to this, we skip and we move on, because I think a lot of people are tired of hearing about Corona. Do you think any good will come out for the industry from this pandemic?
No.
No, we skip. Let's talk about the Nordic markets then, because we have a lot of Nordic people in the chat. And I was thinking this morning, do you think that we could actually reposition the Nordic markets by intensifying the collaboration between the Scandinavian companies, Nordic companies, and say, could we then become as important as the UK is globally if we really join forces and got our local industries completely intertwined, like you guys are at the bank with your Stockholm satellite and your Helsinki satellite? Do you think that's a possibility?
It must be a possibility. I think it's really, really, really difficult. We are talking a lot about it internally in our company, how difficult it is to match. And we're not the first one who's tried this. We are really also, we are often talking about that we could end up in the same situation like a lot of companies before us. Let's just dump that idea again, because I think we have this, of course there's a lot of...
It's the idea of working cross borders in the Nordic countries.
Yeah, but it's not about working cross borders in general. It is just because we have this idea that we are culturally the same, because we have a lot of the same, the welfare model. We of course we have a lot of stuff that binds us together. We can kind of understand each other and stuff like that. But more clever people than me have said, that musically, Denmark is more connected to Germany actually than we are to Sweden. So I think that there's some problems there that could destroy the idea of a Scandinavian company. In our own company, we are really focused on not trying to push, for instance, Danish stuff into Sweden. Even when Hugo had the big success in Germany, we were actually not working Hugo really actively in Sweden, even though we had a company in Sweden. Because Sweden is for Danish musicians and maybe also for Norwegian musicians, one of the most difficult company or countries in the world to work.
Why is that, Sweden?
Yeah, I know. But I think Sweden has been so focused towards UK and other markets. And if you look at the size of the countries, that also explains a lot of the difference. Denmark is this tiny country where kind of everybody knows each other. And then you come to Sweden and you find these, you can get lost in Sweden. You cannot get lost in Denmark. And of course that changed the culture, the way people are, what music they hear, what kind of values they have. But so what we've been trying to do is to build it around the publishing side of our company. As I said in the video, songwriting binds us together. That I think a good song is more easy to work around. But one thing you could say, if what you were talking about should happen, I'm not saying the companies like ours shouldn't. Of course, we should kind of focus on it. But I think, from a media perspective, I'm still wondering why it's so difficult, especially maybe between the public service radios, which are strong in all countries, that there's not just a tiny bit of focus of taking not actually the indie stuff, but the popular stuff, and putting them into rotation in the other countries. Because I'm not so sure actually if it's the audience that doesn't want to bind us together, or if it's the gatekeepers who is kind of...
But don't you think Spotify is actually changing that dynamic a little bit with the playlisting? Or do you think the Swedish sort of Spotify listeners listen to fundamentally different music than Danish? Or do you think there can be crossovers?
I think there can be crossovers, but the problem I think in the current market is that Spotify, they can do a lot of stuff, but they can't do anything by themselves. A new music Friday is not changing anything for you. If you don't have any marketing backup, if you don't have a plan, if you're not working the market, if you're not playing live, if you're not building your artist, then you're down to kind of the pop song that will work anywhere. Then if you just send out a song and it works suddenly in Sweden, Norway, it will probably also work in Australia. So I think I don't know. I think it's really difficult. I've seen now that Spotify has a tendency actually for the global market to say, okay, now we're actually back to where the business were when I started over 20 years ago, where you had this feeling that I was working at EMI and you were told that internally, if you couldn't break Scandinavia, you wouldn't get the chance internationally. You wouldn't get the chance outside Scandinavia. And I think that's a big problem, because you could have a lot of projects that would work better in Poland or Germany or whatever than it would in Sweden. So kind of now Spotify has said again, before they actually start pushing you outside, then you need to prove yourself in Scandinavia. So now we're back to a really, really difficult task again, internationally.
It's a new technology that makes us more old school in a way.
Yes, in a way.
Yeah. In the video, you talk about, you say like, you think it's important to have ambitions on behalf of the company and on behalf of the artist. You sort of divide that ambition into two things. Do you think we lack sort of on the business side of things in our industry, ambition?
I think maybe a lot of people has the ambition, but I think sometimes what maybe to be a bit provocative, we could lack some professionalism and some sense of what real business is about. And I think for me, when I stopped at Copenhagen Records and had a year to think, maybe that was kind of a lucky punch for me, because someday I had the chance to think about what could be wrong in the business and what we lack. So the important thing for me was to by a friend who was working at the architectural company Big, who I also mentioned in the video. I could see they were actually at a tipping point. You had this guy, Bjarke Ingels, who was a genius in architecture, but I know from my friend that they've been through really, really bumpy times. And from the outside, it really looked like a company with a lot of success, and every time I spoke to my friend, he was saying, yeah, but we're not earning any money. And, last week we fired 45 people, and, especially the architecture industry is really up and down. And then what they did was they hired an MD that was not an architect. And, and from that point, I think that was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. From that point, their whole company changed, because suddenly Bjarke and the other architects could actually focus on what they were doing, but they had a really, really professional business lying under what they were doing.
I think you mentioned to me that here in the bank you actually done the same in the last year or so.
Yeah, smaller scale.
But yes. You said we require a specific CFO.
Yes.
Like somebody who can control our finances.
Yes.
It's not the people like you and Ole who's actually out there with the musicians all the time, and you can really easily get excited about a project and overspend.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that we had the dilemma right in our face, because we actually took the decision that we wanted a really professional CFO to the company, and now we hired Rune, who came from Deloitte, and who's been working at Deloitte for 6 years.
Accountant.
A real accountant, yes. But also had the eagerness to try to work with something else, and move away from maybe what we see as a more boring world into a more exciting world.
Yeah.
But the problem was just when we decided we wanted to do this, COVID. We shouldn't talk about COVID, I knew. Yeah. But then that hit, and suddenly you had the dilemma. Okay, this is going to be expensive. Should we do this, or should we wait? And there, Christian, that's a good example of where it's really good to have an outside investor in your company, because for Christian it was just, this is crucial. If you want to move the bank from where you are now into the next level, if you don't have this person that can actually help you with all the basic business stuff, and also help you not only to solve your books, but also to see potential and give you the insight of, okay, actually look at the numbers, where you're earning money, where you're not earning money, what is wrong in your company. So I, as an MD, can actually, focus on saying, okay, we have a problem here. Should we close this down, or should we actually develop? Should we change some stuff? And just in the few months it's been here now, it's been kind of almost a game changer for me in my head, because suddenly I can actually react on what I'm good at, and not use a lot of my time to solve numbers and find, what's the problem here, and wake early in the morning, maybe for no reason at all, because I don't understand.
But let's circle back to the investor thing, because I think for people outside Denmark, it's important to know that the investor that you got in the bank was also the investor behind Noma, the restaurant, who was the best restaurant in the world for several years, and how that whole thing developed. He was part of that. He was also part of a furniture company or design company, Muto, that got sold to an American company, I think 2 years ago, for a huge amount.
Yes.
That he built up from scratch. And when I look at this sort of startup environment in Scandinavia, it's a pretty thriving environment, and people get investors on very early. But I think in the music industry, when I sort of look at all the small companies that are popping up and that are really exciting, but I don't think it's in their mindset to go out and find like an investor.
No.
So
I don't think it was in my mindset either, actually.
Yeah, but how when should people, like, how early should people go out and do this, or like look at this as an opportunity?
Of course, depending on the ambition for the company, but if you have a really big ambition of your company, then I think it should be pretty early. But you also, of course, need the right investor, because I think, especially in the music business, the dangerous thing, and I think why people might tend to back off, is that also me growing up in the business, I saw some of the investors that I definitely didn't want in my company. It's investors that you can define as rich people who can kind of, I like to choose between buying this car this week, or it could also be cool to work in music, then I can go into concerts and go backstage. I think there's a lot of those investors, and you don't need them in your company, because they're definitely going to fuck up your company. So what was interesting for me with Christian, Christian and I, Bjørge and I met through a third person, and we had a lot of talks. Actually, I think we were talking 3 years before something actually happened. But the good thing was that Christian had this. He already had this vision. He didn't only come up with. We were not talking money in the beginning. He came from the outside. He just had music as his passion, as he had food as his passion. So he invested in Noma because it was his passion, but he didn't know anything about it. So he joined with somebody there, and then we were hooked up. And for him, it was kind of like he had this idea of creating. Why don't you create companies around the artist? Why, instead of making a music company, why don't you make a company that actually have a lot of separate companies around the artist? We've not gone into that yet, but it was kind of through that we started talking about music and how to brand and how to build up a company, and we kind of found the vibe together. And I also found out that for Christian, it was not about being part of the music industry. I don't think Christian has ever been backstage. For this presentation we had a really, really hard time getting the picture, because he doesn't want his picture out. And for me, it's just fantastic for me to have an investor that really understands that, it's our business. He is an investor; it's not his business. But getting back to your question, I think it's really, really important to find somebody, and I think, as you were saying, there is a lot of people out there that would be interested. But it is also, and Christian has also told me this afterwards, that it's really, our business is really difficult to understand. He can still hear 5 years after say, I still really don't. In the beginning, he always asked at the board meetings, can we just stop for a minute? Can you please tell me how do we ever earn any money out of this? Which was kind of after 3 years, But then suddenly, and it was like even he's really, really brainy. And I could explain what was happening in my own company with Lucas and trying to explain how much money you could suddenly get in your company. But it was not until Hugo made it in Germany on a really lower scale than Lucas, but that actually money were coming in, and he could see, okay, so what you did 3 years ago, is giving us a lot of money now.
Yeah.
Because I think he came from, furniture business where, not that it wouldn't be long, but it's more structured. You could organize it.
Yeah, you sell a chair and you make the money.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can see, okay, if it goes up now, we can probably scale like this, and then we will have this income, we can hire these people.
Yeah.
Where I was saying to him, yes, but we can have a fantastic cool album, maybe the next album is really bad, and then there's no business at all.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, okay, this sounds really not safe. And I said, yes, welcome to the music business.
Yeah. I think let's circle back to what you talk about in the video about the albums, because I think it's like the album as like we have something called like an album artist, and I think what you described there in the video with Minds of 99 is actually the creation of longtime fans that will come back to show after show after show and listen to album after album, and like the way that it's not one song, it's a whole album that streams. But this is also like a more expensive model. But do you think it's an advantage for an indie company that you can work this longer term than say a major would do? Can you elaborate on your thoughts around the album?
Yeah, I think you're into kind of maybe the problems you have as an indie, because I think the album is, as I said, it's really for the artist, of course, it's really important. It's important as an artistic driver. Not as much as is a commercial driver in short term as it was in the old days. So it is kind of it is an advantage that you can connect with the artist and sign the artist on behalf of that what you're delivering to the table is the long term, and it is also the understanding of the artistic need to make an album. So in that way, it is an advantage, but as you're saying, it's also it can be an expensive thing, to make an album and promote an album. But with that said, it's not as expensive as it was. When we started my old company, Copenhagen Records, 15 years ago, it was kind of much more expensive to do a full album. I would guess that the price has lowered to half or something like that. Again, depending on who you're working with and if they're actually good to work in the computer and stuff like that. Yeah. But I would say it is possible. But then to promote it's, you still sometimes need the videos, or you need the marketing, or you need to do something. So that is a problem. But that's also why you need to be flexible in how you do it, because some of the majors are also more interested if you already made the album. If it's there and you sign it, or you say, we will be the driver on the A&R process. You don't need your employees to work this album like in the old days,
You just want the machine.
Yes, exactly. And actually a lot of the majors, especially the MDs of the majors, they don't want their employees to go around like in the old days. Suddenly an A&R is gone for 4 months doing an album, which happened in the old days, because everybody knew this album is so important that, when I started out, Nick Foss, who was the A&R, who did D&D and stuff like that, he disappeared from the office, and we were all kind of like, where is he? What's going on? But then you saw the chart, 5 years or 5 months after, where it was number one, maybe for the whole Christmas, and then you knew, okay, that's what it's about. But that's not possible anymore on a major. So that's definitely what could be the ambition of an indie. But there's also some problems in that, because you can't really, if you want to build a company like a bigger company, it's not really a possibility either for us, because I can't have Ole being away for 5 months doing one album. No. Then I think you need maybe a smaller setup. So I think the whole A&R issue is kind of a problem to itself.
But are you trying to solve that by having the studios in-house? Is that a practical thing? Or?
Yeah, but it's on the artists that are making albums, a few of them is done here. Okay. I would say if Savers is doing an album and Minds are doing an album, they're not doing it here. This is not an album environment in that sense.
So that's more for songwriting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
I guess the songwriters are maybe also more used to having the A&R sort of so close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on a kind of an artistic level for doing an album, it can be a bit dangerous to have the whole marketing mechanism sitting just next door.
Yeah, looking and listening. Oh, this is pretty good. No.
Exactly.
Let's talk more about the album artist. I think everybody knows what an album artist is, what we call an album artist. Should they be worried about the sort of the new artists who are doing one song a month, and he's always online chatting with fans, something new happening all the time. Like, do you think, is there a place for the introvert artists? Will the introvert artists survive the next 10 years?
Oh, I really, really hope so. I think the music will make, people like that just need to make really, really good records. I'm still, you were beginning to say, what is my drive into this? And I said that I'm really ambitious and competitive. But of course, I also have the drive that I really believe that the fantastic music will always win. I just think right now, if you're introvert, you need to make really fantastic music. But of course it can happen, and it's the most dangerous thing in the music business to say, okay, now it's changed for good. Young people are developing all the time. It's so difficult to see what the next generation wants. And it could be something that happens that the next young generation on 5 or 6 or 10 years, that they've been growing up with, now you're on YouTube when you're 2 years old. So it is plausible that when you become a teenager in 5 or 6 years, the next generation of teenagers will say they would actually more like to turn away from being online.
They want to dig deeper.
Exactly, but we don't know. But I'm just saying, it's really difficult. We can discuss how it is now, and right now it's a big issue, and I think it's really a hard time to be an artist or kind of an album artist, because every time you have a meeting with a label, a bigger label, and that's both independent labels and major labels, it's, of course you still discuss singles, but I would say that it's almost like on top of that now is, we need more action on your Instagram. We need more action on your Facebook. You need to be live. You need to connect with the audience.
I find that quite stressful, and I think in the music industry, when we go out on festivals and stuff like that, I see more and more there are people who say we need to talk about the mental health of the artist.
Yes.
Because our products are breaking down in the process, because we're stressing them out with this Instagram and this Twitter and this TikTok and all these things.
Yeah. I think it's really a big issue, and I think the mental health on that is. Then again, I would say maybe it's too early to say, because TikTok is a bit it's newer. Yeah. But I think the worst thing actually for the musicians has been Instagram, and it's still kind of one of the main sources of communication. Yeah. And I think the reason is that Instagram has this kind of idea that you're getting personal. TikTok doesn't have that. A lot of musicians.
TikTok is driven by fans as well.
Yeah, but it's also driven by entertainment. Yeah. It's kind of the artist can actually, it can still be awful to do if you don't like, to make fun or dance to your own videos or whatever you do. But it's still, you're allowed to be the star. You're allowed to be someone that people know you're not, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like, you're still the artist, if you will. The whole idea of Instagram is that when you're on Instagram, you're not the artist. You're your personal self. Yeah. And that is what fucks up your mind when you're an artist, because you don't want to lie to your audience. But every time you go on Instagram, you're lying to your audience. Yeah. And that's what, in my opinion, what breaks you down. Yeah. So if we can get rid of Instagram in that way, it will be good. But we have it as a problem, all the time. I think people can just go in and watch, Hugo's Instagram, and he's one of the artists. He's doing pop music, but his mindset and the way he would like to work is like a real artist. And it's not like he doesn't want to do anything on Instagram, but he's kind of like, but I don't have anything to say right now. I'm doing music, so just put another picture of me and you trying to do another song. What's interested about that? Yeah, but we need action. You need to figure something out. So I think it's a big problem. I don't know how to solve it, unfortunately.
No, I was going to ask you if you had a solution for it, but
not right now. No.
I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
I got a question about what you have learned from the Swedes so far from working with them. Give us, what was one of the first things that you picked up?
I think, of course, it's always difficult to say what I learned from the people we're working with, Fred and Ben in Sweden, and what I learned from the Swedes. But I think it's connected. I think that kind of, that I'm also mentioning in the video about good songs, kind of the quality check, which is also, and I can say this because this is really something I'm thinking a lot about for myself, is that I can get so excited about a song that I don't want to hear, people saying it's not good enough. And I think it's a Danish thing that we kind of tend to, but just wait till people hear this. I will be right. The song is good enough. It's kind of like where I find on the songwriting that the Swedes tend to be a bit more professional in kind of pushing the limit to that it needs to be better. It needs to be stronger. Maybe on the business side, there's also been in Denmark over the last few years or 10 years or whatever, a lack of understanding of mainstream audience, especially in the indie world. And I'm also talking about our company. I'm not talking about everybody else. When sometimes when you hear stuff from the 80s and 90s that were really big, where you have this vision of the band as being maybe not indie cool, but kind of a cool, big, a big orchestra or artist, and then you hear the songs they were promoting, and then you find out, wow, they were mainstream. And then you hear, and then I hear some of the stuff that we send out today, and I think maybe there's a reason that we don't get into the top of the Spotify, maybe Spotify charts. Maybe we sometimes tend to forget the broader audience. But it's really difficult. But getting back to the Swedes, I think the international ambition, getting back to the songs, but the whole thing of that is that even though the Swedes have been, delivering a lot of, in the old days, artists that were successful internationally, and now later days mainly songs and producers, that they still feel that it's difficult. They're not getting kind of, and I think that's maybe a Dane's biggest problem, is that, like with football, we won in '92. I still feel we just won. We can still win. So I think we have a tendency when it happens in Denmark with Aqua and with Lucas, and I tried it also with Alphabet in the old days. It's kind of like, but you can see we can do it. Instead of, and that's maybe to push that into the talks we had about the companies, professionalizing that. I think the sad thing in Denmark is that we actually, a lot of people is always saying, but it happened in Sweden because of ABBA, and it happened, they had another story. Yes, but we also had big successes in Denmark. All the way back, we had nobody even, also this about knowing your history and building the business on the history that you're actually standing on somebody else's shoulders. We had this, when Alphabet went top 3, I think, top 10 with the album in UK, I wanted to make a press release. So I went in to say, how many times has this actually happened for a Danish artist? And then I found an artist I actually really didn't know. There was only 3. It was Aqua, and then it was Alphabet. And then there was an artist called Nina and Frederik, which was an artist from, I think, the late 50s and the beginning of the 60s. And it's just really, really weird to be in a country where we say, we have never had international success, and then we actually forgot the international, and they were extremely big. They were doing shit with Louis Armstrong, and they were doing UK. They were playing Royal Albert Hall, and it's just like, and it was kind of the same that happened with Aqua. It was kind of like the success was tremendous, but it was like, but we don't like it, and we didn't use it kind of to grow the professional part of the Danish business. It was just kind of disappearing like sand between our fingers. And my feeling is that in Sweden, and I'm still looking into this, why they're so good at kind of using the success to actually create business in their country. There came so much stuff out of the ABBA success. I think even the prize there, the Polar Prize is kind of connected, to the ABBA success. And Max Martin, if I guess he or some of his closest associates, they're working from Sweden. They're big studio complexes in Sweden. Why the fuck is it that every time something happens in Denmark, people wants to move to LA or go away from Denmark? So I think that's the sad thing. And now, I've made a decision that I want to stay in Denmark. So kind of the whole idea with this company is also to say, could we, we are not there yet with a big international success, but that's kind of the aim and the dream.
But you also said, I've heard you say before, it's important that you follow the artist. It's important you are where the artist is.
Yeah.
So if you break in the US,
then problem
like
starts.
I know that when Hugo goes to Germany, you go 2 weeks in a car with him to every radio station yourself.
Yeah.
Because you want that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's the same when you go to LA.
Yeah.
So you need to send somebody to be close to the artist, else you lose them, you say.
Yes.
So that's so you can't really escape.
No, and I think that's a dilemma. You know, it's as I heard from everybody who's tried it, is that the real trouble begins not financially. Then you solve your financial problems if you get one of these big stars. Yeah. But after that, you know, the internal problem begins, because it takes so much time. You know, you go from, I don't know, 50 to 100 emails a day up to maybe over 1,000 emails a day if you suddenly have some kind of global success. So you need to have assistance. You need to find, you know, you need to start prioritizing. And the question there is, you know, is it possible to kind of create a collaboration with an American management? Or would that just tend to, you know, everybody who's online now who knows anything about this would say, yeah, but then you have this relationship and then they steal the artist, you know, because one of my old bosses were actually first time I lost an artist, he was saying, yeah, but the person rolling with the artist, who's around the artist, has the power over the artist. So it's kind of, you can feel so close to an artist, but if suddenly you skip the relationship and somebody else is close, they will be in power. And so I think I don't have the solution to that. I think the only way, what we're trying to do is to say, okay, if you build a professional system with a real office, you know, where you have a system that can actually maybe bear the pressure, and you have a system where you can hire people in, so you can help people, and then send, you know, management assistants out. Because the funny thing is, in UK and US you can do it. In UK it's really, really natural that you have a management company where you have 1 or 2, 3 central persons, and then you have assistants who are also really, really good at executing. We don't seem to have that. So and that's not a cultural thing. That's just, you know, to learn the business and how do you create a real management business. And I think also getting back to maybe what we started about talking about, that's where we might need to get into some Scandinavian models, because you know, you tend to see that the smaller companies that are suddenly breaking an artist, it's weird because they tend to disappear a few years after. And maybe we need, you know, instead of that all the independents, and I did that myself, I know, so I'm not blaming anyone. I did that with my old label, but instead of that, the target is to sell to a major. Then you could say, in the 90s, what happened there on the label side was that, you know, independents were joining forces, which could be a really, really interesting.
So you strengthen
thing.
If you get a big international success, you basically hire your indie competitor.
Yes.
Who's on the same level as you, as an extra workforce.
That could be a model, or you say, okay, you have some experience in this. You know, what will happen if we actually join forces and create what you said in the beginning, the big independent management, you know, outfit for Scandinavia that doesn't only have 1 act, but actually has 2 or 3 acts. Because also if you have that stronger position, I think it would also be more difficult for someone in the US to say, it's good that friend you had in Denmark that he was helping you. Now the professionals are taking over. If actually the company you're connected to are professional, you know, then that opening would not be there. And you know, you could also have this crazy thought, as Bjarke Ingels and the big team had. You could open in the United States. Why shouldn't you open in the United States? It's kind of like, if you have the vision and you have the right artist, maybe you should hire a person, you know, if you have this.
And that's also where the investor comes in.
Exactly.
Basically, at that point, you have the big success, you want to open in LA, then you get an investor to basically fund that.
Exactly. Instead of, as you were saying, we all know, if you don't do that, you're going to lose the artist.
And that's a Scandinavian problem.
Exactly.
I think we are coming to an end here. I want to ask one last question. If I was to apply for a job here at the bank, I won't, but maybe, no. Wait
until after Corona.
What would you look for in a young person coming to you for a job? Like, what skills are you and Ole looking for? Say, okay, we need somebody who can do this. I think that's what is it that you think that people should?
But it's a tricky question, because it's actually something we're discussing a lot right now. And what we're discussing right now is that I think we are at a level now It was actually our Swedish partner Ben who had this input on our last leader meeting, and he was saying, we need to make sure we are not hiring people like ourselves. It's like you have a tendency, because if I should have answered your question maybe 3 months ago, I would say I want somebody who has the ambition I have, who's competitive as I am, who kind of that understands that can. My main thing will be work like me. I'm looking for somebody like myself.
Yeah.
And there you're getting down to the professional stuff again. That's really an unprofessional way to look at an organization. And getting back to the football picture again, you need someone to be in the defense. You don't need everybody to try to score, because the picture there is then you're playing football like you did when you were 5 years old. Everybody going for the goal, and now you organize and so we're getting into the discussions. Okay, and I know that maybe for some of you guys it seems really obvious, but I can just admit I haven't been thinking about it. Okay, maybe we should hire somebody where you think, wow, this is. We have a really weird discussion here because the person is really different from us, but maybe this person can actually fill in some of the gaps that we have. Maybe we don't, and then I said afterwards, maybe we don't need more brains, maybe we need somebody who can, what is it called, do the job, who's not asking questions, maybe we need somebody, as you said, with management, just to go out there and do it, and not question, and not come up with 10 ideas a day, because we have a lot of ideas that we never get the time to
execute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel still, personally, I feel really young, even though I'm 50 soon. I feel on kind of how to grow the company and how to fix the company. Sometimes I get really low self-esteem because I still feel that there's so much things I don't know about organizing a company.
But that's also the fun part, no?
Yeah, it is.
To figure all these things out.
Yes, but I think getting back to yes, but I don't think much of us have been seeking into this world to see the fun part of how you organize a company. I think a lot of us have been in here because we fucking love music. We want to stay young. We want to compete. We want to conquer the world, and we don't want a normal job, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's also the problem for all of us, is that sometimes we need, and I can see now with the age I'm going into, I'm basically, turning 50 and being in the music business for more than 20 years, you're basically fucked if you don't make it, because even though maybe I'm the MD here now, that doesn't mean anything if this company is not there anymore, because who wants somebody from the music, so I'm kind of stuck here now. So what it's also about is to create a great environment to work. And for now, also speaking as, talking about as one who has actually sold a company to a major, of course, the money is really nice. I built this company out of those money, but it's also something that you tend to deeply regret when you need to leave, because, you catalog everything. It's just gone. It's just getting swallowed by this big black hole where it's just becoming catalog. And so my dream is, to see if we can create a company that, that we are not selling, and that I can actually pass on to somebody, Ole, whatever, and maybe sit in the board, play some golf, whatever. I'm not playing golf yet, but maybe I should end up doing that. Yeah.
If Ole one day
then
takes
Ole
over
can do
in
it.
25 years.
Yes, exactly.
I don't see you again anytime soon.
Not.
It's 11, and you guys need to move on. Thanks so much for watching. I'm talking to my computer, but you guys actually on this camera over here. Very unprofessional. But thanks so much for joining us here in Copenhagen. I hope you enjoyed it. The video that we showed in the beginning will be up again, and of course, I think each music export office has a contact, the contact person, who is my colleague Carolina, that you can contact if you want to get in contact with Danish companies. You can contact Carolina at mxd.dk. She's our Nordic advisor, and there's more info about that with your local export office. Thanks so much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Everybody's waving. It's very nice.